Welcome back to Redefine Parenting with your host, Veenu Keller. We want to welcome you to Spanglish World Network and H.E.R Network on Zingo TV, channels 250 and 251. Zingo TV is a free app that can be downloaded on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire Sticks, Roku and Roku Sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Redefine Parenting is a revolutionary approach to nurturing our children. Veenu will bring you live experts, transformative insights, and a fresh perspective, all aimed at helping families worldwide truly understand their children. Together, let's give them a childhood they won't have to heal from. Hello and welcome to everyone. I am so thrilled to have this guest. I'm honored to have this guest. I met this man a few years ago. He presented on Tony Robbins' stage many, many times. And I've had the privilege of getting to know him, knowing his heart. And it's, I've been trained by him about videoing and how to present yourself on video. And so I asked this guy, as my friend, would you please come and share with my audience, to parents, anything that you have, because everything this man talks about is pure wisdom. And so here we have Todd Hartley on our show tonight, going to be talking to us about how we change our child's mess into our message. So Todd, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Oh my God, you kidding? It's an honor to get to do this and to help parents around the world support their child so that child can become a very productive adult. So cool.
And it's, I at first I was like, gosh, is this out of his wheelhouse? But I'm like, of course it's not. This is Todd. You have so much wisdom to bring. And, when we talked about what topic we wanted to do, you said, let's look at these kids and the mess that they think that they're creating, and how do we create that in our message? And it really resonated with me, because that's kind of what led me on this path to help kids understand kids, coach kids. Because when I was going through my stuff, being bullied, and I was suicidal and I was self-harming, and my mom sent me to all these therapists and everyone wanted to medicate me. And I would just ask myself, what is this life for? Why am I doing this? I did not know that everything I was going through would lead me to where I'm at today.
Beautiful. Well, I mean, look, it all makes sense. I love it. Is this out of Todd's wheelhouse? For those that don't know, I talk about marketing and sales optimization and how to grow your business. But the real first topic that I went through for the first maybe 30 years of my life is struggling with attention disorders and learning disabilities. This is my primary topic, the one that I really want to talk about on stage, and the one that my next chapter in my life is going to be devoted to. So thank you for asking me to do this with you.
This is amazing. Amazing. So let's just dive in. When you said, how do you change your child's mess into their message? What does that mean to you specifically?
Well, look, it's a big topic. And what it means to me specifically is we've all got a bit of a mess. I mean, I just was, cleaning out the closet the other day, and that in some areas is a mess. And in other areas, it's totally organized, and it's just like our life. So where is it that we are, let's say, not playing at our full potential? And how can we turn that into an opportunity for a young person? I'm talking about a young person not playing at their full potential. How can we turn that into an opportunity for them to play larger? And for me, when I was struggling with my attention disorders and my learning disabilities, and listen up, I didn't tell anybody about it until I was in my 40s. Wow. My family kept it as a secret. It was a shame secret that my family helped me keep. And I struggled for a long time, and I was humiliated, and it stunted my dating in the early part of my life because I lacked the confidence, because I didn't believe that I was good enough. And I had all of these limiting beliefs that just piled on top of each other. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that I learned to play at another level and not look for sympathy from other people. Yeah. I was sympathy seeking for a very long time because I felt like I was defective. What
Right.
I discovered is I had deficiencies in areas that needed to be strengthened. I needed to strengthen my weaknesses and develop my strengths. And once I did that with reading, which I in my 20s had a very hard time reading. Once I did that with my ability to write, I didn't pass my college essay exit. No, my college exit essay. Yeah, that. And I really struggled for a long time. I wasn't supposed to go to college. So the real trick is we have to help our kids get reconnected to that champion inside that's
Yes.
willing to exercise on a daily basis in areas where they're deficient. And once we do that, they'll start to rise up, because a lot of these deficiency areas are muscles that need to be exercised.
I hear you, and I can agree with it so much because I too grew up with, ADHD, but I wasn't diagnosed until my 20s with it. And it made such sense when I was diagnosed with it. I'm like, okay, that was the issues I had. And sometimes I would say, what could my mom have done differently? Or what could your parents have done differently? And the other sense of it, I do believe, would I be who I am today if my
Right.
parents knew better, if my mom knew better, if your parents knew better? Would you be doing what you're doing today? Because it's through the struggles that we've had with the way our parents have raised us and through what we have done that we are able to do what we're doing today. And for those parents that are listening that see their kids, like my twins, um, you know, well, 3 out of our 6 kids have dyslexia. You know, I think all 6 of them have the title of ADHD. And yet it's exactly what you said. It's looking at what are the deficiencies that need to be strengthened and what are their strengths that I can encourage to be even more strong.
So look, I love the topic. Let's just talk about one type of dyslexia, like with numbers. When I all of my math classes were waived because I was a bit of a numerical train wreck. Okay. And and I grew up in an era where there weren't accommodations for people with learning differences. In fact, I the school treated me as if I was a bad kid.
Mm,
And I would often, my seat in the school was in front of the principal's office.
wow.
And not because I was a problem child, not that I was getting into problems or fighting or, doing drugs. It was that I had a really hard time keeping up in school, and they didn't have a place for somebody like me. It was
Mm,
too new. So the kids that I met were all the kids getting in trouble because they were waiting in line to meet with the principal. So what is it that changed that? When did I start to organize numbers? Well, when I was in college, I applied for a internship at Apple Advertising. Apple was not like a competitive thing. It wasn't like kids were going out for this. And I got accepted. And so I showed up and I was the only intern at Apple Advertising in that department. And my job was to take the phone book, for those that can remember the phone book, and
yes.
transfer these numbers over into a ledger. So all day for the summer, I took numbers over here, transferred them over into my head, and on the other side of the desk, I wrote them down. And the gap between here and here, when it went through in my head and over to here to the pen, was where I started strengthening this muscle
Wow.
to organize the numbers and double, triple check. And you would be surprised how quickly the brain will rise up to its moment. And by what does Tony Robbins say? Repetition is the mother of skill. The more repetition you knew that I got over here to over here, it allowed me to organize so I didn't embarrass myself. And that's just one of many examples. I couldn't read, but I wanted to be a talk show host on the radio. A teacher laughed at me because I would never read in class. And how could you expect to be on the radio if you're not willing to read in front of people? And that was humiliating to me, but it exposed something beautiful, that I was playing small and I wasn't developing myself and being honest and direct enough with myself to put myself through the exercise. So what did the exercise look like? Repetition, the mother of skill. What was it? The newspaper. I started with one article and I could barely get through it in a day and make sense of it or remember. And this started in middle school. And by the time I was in college, I was reading the whole damn newspaper. And what happened is reading out loud became easy. It's all repetition and strengthening the muscle if you're willing to invest in yourself.
Right. So that's just it. It's, as adults, we get to invest in ourselves. So how do we invest in our kids? How do we show up as parents, seeing what our kids struggle at and how to support our kids? Because most kids say, I don't want to do it. And here's why they don't want to do it. It's because they're afraid to fail. It's a struggle for them. It's hard for them. Like you said, it took you how long to get through one article, right? And so when we're telling our kids, like, you need to do this because it's going to teach you to be better. It's like I tell my kids, I said, once upon a time, 2 + 2 was hard for you. And I said, what is 2 + 2 to you? They're like, it's 4, Mom, duh. And I'm like, yeah,
Right.
but how did you get there? How did you get it to that point? Because it was really difficult for you. Because again, my kids had issues with numbers. More of my daughter, she still sees that she'll transpose the numbers. So 36 looks like 63 to her.
Right.
So, it's a difficult thing for her. And so, but again, to tell them to practice and practice and practice, they're just like, it's too hard. And then it's a struggle, and they don't understand that we're trying to help you so it's not a struggle.
Yep.
You
I think passion is an important area that's underutilized in with parents and with children. Let me give you an example. I couldn't read, but I could tell you every baseball player in professional baseball. Like, I could go through and I knew every number of every player and what team they were on. And it was in my passion area. So passion is the fuel that allows you to override a limitation. What is it that child is willing to invest time in? And can you double down in that area and turn that passion into growth opportunities and potential? So an example of that was my parents decided, by the way, the best thing my parents ever did was not medicate me.
Yeah.
And allow me to do this naturally. And so what they decided was, I was always getting baseball cards. That was my jam. That was my passion. I had attention disorders, but surprisingly, I could spend all damn day on something I was interested in. But if I wasn't interested, I couldn't pay attention. So my parents just looked at it like mental gym.
Yeah.
And where could we get him exercising his attention? And so one of the things that we did is, if I wanted baseball cards, we had to organize and alphabetize.
Nice.
On every team, they had to be organized and alphabetized. And what did that do? That strengthened a focus muscle in a passion area that allowed me to pull it over and apply it in areas later on when I was older, when I wasn't interested or passionate. But I developed that muscle. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's exactly what I talk about. So I have a video program called Crack the Code to Parenting. And in one of the weeks I teach them, it's all about taking their strengths to strengthen their weaknesses. And that's exactly it. I said, find things that they're good at. Find things that they have that passion, that desire,
Yes.
that want so bad. And then use that to strengthen that deficit, that weakness, whatever it is, and it's exactly what your parents did to you. They saw your love for baseball, the baseball cards, but now we're going to strengthen the areas that you lack in or you're not as strong in.
Right.
That's exactly what I teach parents. And that's what we need to do. Is a lot of our kids have hobbies. They love, like my daughter's an artist. She loves to paint. She loves to make a mess out of pens and paints and whatever, but that's one of the things that we did to start when she was smaller, to learn colors, to learn her colors, because she was really into it. So we would start to get her to say, okay, well, if you want to do this, you need to find the blue and the yellow. And so what would she do? She would start to, nope, that's not blue. So you can't do it. That's not blue. And so we did that. And then all of a sudden she was able to start picking it up and remembering the colors, because we started making that memory match.
Yes. I love this. I am I got significant help from the SALT Center at the University of Arizona. They're the nation's leading academic support program for students with learning differences. And today I'm on the board of the SALT Center, and I'm incredibly honored. They changed my life. And one of the things that I discovered in this process was that I needed to strengthen my muscle in showing that I was interested in things that I was terribly disinterested in. And my my advisor, so they have learning specialists that study each of the students and help you come up with your own. SALT stands for Strategic Alternative Learning Techniques. So I came up with all these alternative learning techniques. Like what student couldn't benefit from discovering that there's alternative techniques and they can choose the ones that work best for them and apply them. And once I started doing that, to give you an example, now that I set this thing up, is I was struggling with paying attention in classes that I really couldn't care about. And I know a lot of kids feel that way. So my learning specialist said to me, hey, I know you want to be an investigative reporter. When are you going to start investigating? And I said, well, when somebody hires me. And she goes, you mean you're going to wait to learn how to do that until somebody hires you? And I said, well, I mean, that's when I'll get going. And she said, why don't you use the time in class to start investigating what's going to be on the test? And that for me was light bulb moment where I was like, wait a minute, you mean I can get really good at what I want to do and practice when I'm in class, which all of a sudden made class interesting and important. And my grades went from barely staying in college to the rest of the time in college getting all A's and only one B. And I'll tell you right now, I never got A's or B's outside of sports.
Wow.
So it was all about the psychological opportunity that I had before me that was related to my passion. And this is why I believe that the passion is the fuel that'll help you overcome any obstacle. And parents should be helping that child cultivate a level of passion that would put it in areas that they're not interested in and allow them to succeed.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like schools can really support this too, because a lot of the kids that I do have the privilege of coaching, a lot of them don't know their purpose. And that's why parents contact me. It's like, can you coach my kid? Like, what's their purpose? What's their passion? Right now, kids need to know what the opportunities lie ahead of them. Like, we're in a different world.
Right.
That's why I love taking your classes. I love hearing you talk about like videoing and marketing and stuff like that, because you stay up with like what's coming up ahead and what do we need to look for and what's going to be the new wave of things, of how we do things. And 20 years ago, we wouldn't be talking about this. No. We weren't talking about social media. We weren't talking about videoing. We weren't talking about headspace and how to, speak the right words of, AI. Like, what was that, And so us as parents, the more that we know, the better we can do. The more we start to understand our children and understand how to help them with the opportunities that are out there, before, like when I grew up, it's, do you want to be a lawyer, a doctor, a nurse, even like a cosmetology school, now it's marketing, videography, right. It's so different. Even editing is different now than it was probably when you were a reporter.
Yeah, I just want to rock. I want to rock. And anytime somebody would ask me that, I'm like, well, that's an easy answer. But, at some point you start to fall into topics that are of natural interest. Mm-hmm. My wife is a yoga therapist and she fell into that naturally. And, you fell into, and I fell into, and we all find our way, But there are topics when we're younger that are passion topics for that period that may not be what our career is,
Right.
that are still prime areas to strengthen weaknesses. Remember, I developed my weaknesses, I strengthened my weaknesses and developed my strengths. So a very smart, honest assessment on where you struggle is a great opportunity to create growth games. A growth game is what I call, and someday I'm going to write a book on this, but a growth game is all of these opportunities in life where we can strengthen our weaknesses. And that for me is looking at numbers in the phone book, or when I'm writing down a number and then transferring it is just a growth game of the moment. And if maybe you've got like a child who has a charisma deficiency, a perfect growth game is every time you go to a counter to make a purchase, every time you go to you have an interaction with somebody behind a counter, turn that into a moment to dial up your charisma, and you'll never see them again. So it's the perfect place for a 30-second exercise of getting a little bit out there, out of your comfort zone, and trying to make that other person smile. And if you can just have that goal, wherever the deficiency is, create a growth game and execute that in a repetitious way, you'll be rewarded. What does Tony Robbins say? You'll be rewarded in public for what you intensely practice and refine in private. And that is my entire life right there summed up. Because when you create a growth game in a deficiency area, you can then go out and be strong in an area where you once had a deficiency.
I think a lot of parents, though, don't even realize it when we're in the thick of it. You know, like I've said this before, I get very vulnerable on my show, and there'll be times people are like, oh, I bet you your family's so great and so peaceful. And I'm like, mine, not so much, not so much, you know, but again, it's what I practice now. So, you know, I have 6 kids, but the twins are 11. They, you know, the kids are out of the house, but the twins are here. And they're constantly battling. They're at that age. They're starting hormonal stuff, you know, and it's a boy-girl twin, constant bickering. And then they'll have hours of best friends, and then they'll bicker and bicker. And so here I work with other families, and I'm like thinking, what? It just dawned on me. I'm like, why am I just sitting through this and going through the pain of this? Like, why am I not doing something as if this was a client? And so all of a sudden I came up with a strategy, just the top of my head, and it's working. And it's working.
Beautiful. What is it?
So I tell them, I say, you know, the minute they raise their tone or like, shut up, I'm like, wait, because we have a theme in our house. First of all, it's called loving kindness. I said, that's not loving kindness. So what I need you to do is take that tonality, take whatever you need, go to your room, and you cannot come out until you find a solution to do better.
Yes.
So they come out, I got a solution. I said, okay, what's the solution? They said, I need to take a breath before I tell my sister this, or before I tell my brother that. I said, okay. And then all of a sudden the tonality rises. I'm like, nope, go to your room, find another solution. And I said, this time, find a solution you're going to follow through on.
Yes.
Back down. And they would say, I have a solution. It has been, the last 24 hours has been the quietest between those two that I've had in months. But it's also taken my husband and I said, Brian, you got to follow through on this, buddy. Like, as much as it's going to be tough in the beginning, but I promise you, we will reap the rewards as long as you and I can stay on the same page,
aligned,
and aligned with this. And then every time they're rude to each other or rude to us, we're like, go to your room, because we have created their room as our safe space. First of all, we don't say you can't be mad, you can't be sad, you can't be this. You could feel your feels. We want our kids to feel their feels, but do it in your room because it's a safe space for you. And when you're ready to come and be a part of the family where it's nice, love, and kindness, that's when we want you to step out and give us the solution of what that's going to look like that you're going to follow through on. And I'll be damned if it's working. I'm like, but I'll tell you, because this is what most families go through. They don't realize that they have the power and the wisdom in that moment. And I remember a story that Tony had said about his own kid, because all of us are like, you know, his son was doing all this, and he's Tony Robbins, and why is his son doing all this? And he realized he wasn't the one to fix it or solve it, because it was his kid. He was emotionally evolved. He went outside of himself to get support. He went outside himself to get help. And I thought, that's what we have to do sometimes. We're so
Yeah.
involved with our own family that we can't see it.
Right. Right. The closer we are to the light, the more blind we are, right? So it's in marketing, it's the same thing, by the way. Like sometimes I'm laying out my own strategy and I struggle because I'm too close to it.
Yes.
So I have to turn to a friend in my agency and go, yo, help me through this, right? So I mean, it's like this in almost every scenario. And I love that you, following the SALT at the University of Arizona model, you came up with strategic alternative techniques. And that's a great opportunity for a parent when the first one doesn't work, come up with a strategic alternative.
Yes. And I do believe that. And as parents, stop beating yourself up like you're failing, because you're not. You're still in the game. And as long as you're in the game, you're not failing. If something's not working, again, come up with a different strategy, reach out for support. Especially with social media, there's so much resources out there
Yeah.
to get support and find different alternative techniques to use.
Yes.
And, the biggest gift we can give our kids is awareness. It really is us being aware of what they're doing, us being aware of what we're doing. And again, is how do we take that mess and create a masterpiece?
Right. Right. Well, look, my mess is part of my life work and
Mm,
will be. It will be forever. And I'm excited for that next phase. I'm probably going to be teaching sales and marketing for the rest of my life, but I also want to teach how to overcome your learning challenges. And I also am working on a book right now with my wife on how to reconnect in a relationship and find intimacy together. Like,
yes.
what are the secrets to reconnecting and with your partner and quickly regaining your intimacy? Like, I think that's like one of those great topics that people don't discuss enough. So I'm excited for the opportunity, but I think my mess is my message. And the truth is, I think there are a lot of people, a lot of young people that are struggling right now. And if they confront the struggle with parental support or the support of an advocate one way or another, that struggle can become a strength.
Yes.
And I mean, that is my whole life story is, um, by the way, my parents, as I mentioned, would not medicate me, but I was in all the slow kid classes with all the medicated kids who were barely awake. And my parents would take me to a therapist. I don't know what it would be called. I was too young, but I would visit with an educational specialist that was also a therapist, and we would work through these things. And what I discovered is I could actually work through it naturally. And
Nice.
in doing so, I became stronger because I wasn't dependent on some substance. I was dependent on me working through things with substance up here. And that changed my brain entirely. And really, all I had to do over over a very long period of time was develop those skills, and eventually they became strengths.
Nice. Nice. And so we do have our kids on the medication, the probably the lowest dose we can. And what we've realized is when they don't take their meds, they're frustrated. They can't concentrate. And I don't think they have the attention deficit, because I've seen them have attention on areas that they want to. But I also feel that the medication has worked for them. But my hope and my husband's hope is to get them off. And I had Dr. Cowan on here, the one who wrote the book on the elements, the 5 elements, the fire child, water child. I've had him on my show. Great guy. And he gets his patients off of it. Like, he works with ADHD clients all the time. And he also sees our strengths. And so we're going to be working with him hopefully soon, because we really want to get our kids off the meds, right? We want to be able to train their brain to slow down
Yeah.
on its own and not need
Yeah.
medication to slow it down, because that's really what we're doing. We're slowing down, and they're not zombies. Trust me, they're still off the chart, but they're able to concentrate more and get more done, and they're more productive, because as soon as we did that, they jumped 6 reading levels. They
Yes.
were, stopped failing their classes. They were doing well. But again, I don't want that crutch. It's like you said, I want them to use a substance in here, not have a substance to create the substance.
Can I give you just my insight on attention disorders? Okay. So, the SALT Center has a big focus on attention disorders. And every semester I get to work with faculty and alumni to come and teach weekend workshops on life outside of college. And it's a real honor to get to work with these students. Here's what I've discovered. And I've vetted this theory amongst specialists, and I've got it confirmed to me. And I think culturally, we've poorly defined what an attention disorder is. It is not an inability to focus. It is selective disinterest. Right. So then they don't focus. And so let me just tell you a quick little anecdote. When I'm working with students, I'm normally, before we get started in the morning, I'm like, hey, Jimmy, what do you do outside of here? Like when you're not at school? And he goes like, oh, well, I like to play guitar. I go, oh, that's awesome. Or Minecraft, or I like to paint, or I am great with horses. I work on cars. It doesn't matter. So I know you have an attention disorder. Are you able to, when you're on Minecraft, like, doesn't matter the example, stay there all day? And like, sometimes you forget to even drink water because you're so focused. Oh my God. Yeah. The other day I forgot to eat. I go, have you thought maybe you don't have an attention disorder? Maybe you just have selective focus, because they can focus exactly on their passion area.
Or what's fun.
Or what's fun, which really means we've got an opportunity to frame this differently. Instead of them thinking they have an inability to focus, they focus on things they like, they tune out things they don't. And how do we bridge that gap so we can create some growth gains and make the boring things fun that keep you interested? That was like, once I figured that out, it changed my entire life.
Yep. It's funny because they have this math, it's almost like a math video game, and it's called Prodigy. My son would play hours on it, and his math grade just kept going and going up because he got graded, like, because they give you like little tests and stuff to do, and he would do so good.
It changed my entire life.
Oops.
Sorry. That was me. I will fess up to it. You see, people were blowing me up on LinkedIn. So I just popped up, and then the audio started playing. Please excuse me.
No worries. So it's by playing a video game with math, it strengthened his skills. So whoever created Prodigy was a genius, right? So it's like creating these things because we know our kids love video games. I have a friend named Kurt, and he created through Khan Academy, and my son loves these brain breaks. Like, he has created this thing where it's all active, and you follow directions and you do these things, and there's boulders and you got to hide from the boulders stuff. It's on YouTube. And my son loves it because it gives his body able to move. See, what we've done in school, just like when you and I grew up, it's sit there, be quiet, keep your head down unless you're looking at the chalkboard, and mind your business and be quiet. There's too much energy in us. We need to be moving around. You and I have done Tony events. Why are people into it? Why can people go for hours on end? He has us moving around. He has us jumping up and down. He has us, integrating the learning that we're getting in that moment instead of just writing there, taking notes, there's part of that. And so what I've learned just being at these events and what my brain's been able to absorb, because again, I have the ADHD too, and I'm not medicated. So how am I able to absorb it? I have to move my body. I have to move the energy around and not stay planted. And that's what we do. I literally go into these classrooms, and I'm like, I remember when my son was in kindergarten, both my kids wanted to move around. I said, let's take some masking tape and let's make a box and give them a boundary that as long as they stay in that boundary, you won't say anything to them. That means they can stand up and do their math. They can turn around in circles, but as long as they're keeping their mouth quiet and they're staying in their boundary, you can't say anything. My kids started to progress because they weren't confined and getting in trouble for not sitting down.
Right. Right. That's torture
It is.
because it's so hard to sit there. And my grades went through the roof when I changed my seat. I was the kid that always sat in the second to last row in the back when I
Mm,
had a choice. And a guidance counselor said to me, "Where do you sit?" And I said, "Oh, I sit in the back." And she said, "Don't you know that kids in the first row get A's and kids in the second row get A's and B's and kids in the third row get B's and C's, and it goes all the way to the back where, what's your grade?" And I said, "I've got a D." She goes, "Oh, well, you're sitting in the perfect place with your peers." But if you move to the front, your peers would be people that are getting A's. So I moved to row 1 or row 2. And what happened is I wasn't checking out girl in row 6 when I was supposed to be listening and seeing what she did with her hair that day, and look at the dude with the backpack that had the funny sticker on it and watch people's body language. I just focused it on the material. And surprisingly, when I eliminated 3/4 of the room and they all disappeared and it was just me and the educator, I became more interested. I was more focused. And then the people next to me were perfect study partners because they cared.
right. Right. It's funny that you said that because I made that self discovery for myself. I would put myself in front of the room all the time. And it's so funny because even to this day, we'll go to an event or something. And Todd, you know, my husband, so he's like, not person, like, don't look at me. I got to focus on what I'm doing. And I'm the one that's like, no, 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 let's sit in the front of the room. And he wants to sit in the back of the room and not be noticed. So he can move around. And I'm the one that's like, no, 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 we got to sit in front of the room. He's like, why do you always want to sit in the front of the room? I'm like, because that's the only way I can pay attention.
Yeah.
That is the only way. And I know that I will get the most out of what I'm watching or what I'm absorbing if I'm in front of the room, because like you, I'm like looking at girl. I'm like, oh, wow, that's a nice purse. Oh my God, look at her shoes. She
Yeah.
has some cute shoes
I'm
on.
super into it.
Yeah. And so I learned at an early age how to set myself up to win. So here's what I want to tell parents, because I think that there's a lot of information we give. One way to set your kids up to win, from what I'm hearing from you, Todd, is think of alternative techniques that you can give your kids for them to learn. You know, have that conversation with your child and ask them what they need. We're not doing that either. We're not asking our kids, like, what is it that you need and how can I support you?
Right.
You know, I always tell people, if your kids are failing a grade, don't jump to a conclusion that they're dumb or they're not putting enough effort. Get curious. And my listeners hear this all the time. Be curious, not critical. Be curious about what's going on. Is it their environment? Are they sitting in the F row or are they sitting in the A row? You know,
Right.
there's a lot of things in here to set your kid up to win. Like, and ask your kid. I ask my kid this all the time. What do we need to do to set you up to win? What would winning even look like to you?
Right.
You
Right.
know?
I know. I my, my parents didn't put any grade pressure on me. I had enough struggles. My parents are both entrepreneurs. Their focus was really on, they noticed that I had an entrepreneurial brain, an
Mm,
entrepreneurial passion, and things that I was emotionally invested in, I would do really well in. So when we would get into the car, my parents would always exercise my entrepreneurial or my passion brain. And my mom would say things to me like, and my mom had a very successful business. My dad had a successful business. My mom was a interior designer for celebrities in LA. Like she did Eddie Van Halen's home and a variety of other celebrities. But my mom would always say to me, "Hey, look, if you if you struggle with numbers, you can always hire somebody to take care of your books. It is not the end of the world." Like my parents were not limited in the way that they're focused. They allowed me to think bigger than the moment. And it was humiliating for me because my peers, when I would be in the playground, I was the wittiest and among the most athletic and really fun to be around. But in the classroom, I was sequestered to all the slow kid classes and the humiliation of not feeling like you could go out and ask a girl out that you were attracted to because she would never want to date you because you're in the slow kid classes was enough to cripple me into, the middle part of college. So I think part of helping a child understand where it is that they're struggling and then give them some growth opportunities
Yes.
to exercise it is tremendous.
100% agreed. 100% agreed. It's funny that you're saying that you're in the slow kid class. Funny story. I just found out like 5 years ago I was in the slow kid class. And I was like with one of my best friends from 7th grade, and she has dyslexia. And I'm like, gosh, Amy, I didn't know you had dyslexia. She goes, yeah, my whole life. And I'm like, I used to try to copy after you. She goes, yeah, and I never understood why. And I said, well, I mean, I thought you were the smart one. She goes, we were in the slow kid class. And I'm like, and she goes, and you did really well because I had A's. And I'm like, I mean, I thought I was one of the smart kids. She goes, you were in the slow kid class. I'm like, I was in the slow kid class. And she goes, yeah. And I was in all her classes. I had no idea. So that was the funny thing. I found out 5 years ago I was slow kid, but I was a smart one in the slow kid class. But again,
there's something to be saying for that.
It is, right? I mean, it really was because my attention. It's, it was hard for me to keep my focus. And that's what it was. It wasn't so much attention as it was my focus because things were hard for me. Reading was hard for me. Mathematics was hard for me. Like multiplication, I thought I was going to be the only one in high school that still couldn't multiply because it was so difficult for my brain to catch on to it. But I had a teacher in 5th grade that made a game out of it. She made a game out of it. And all of a sudden I started to get it. And I was like, oh, I feel so smart.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden I was getting it, but it was through fun. It was through playing that I learned.
That's a shift in perspective. That's changing it from being boring and painful to joyful and an adventure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And here's another thing though. I had a speaker on last week. He was great. It was my son's soccer coach. And he said, he's also a high school teacher. And we were talking about this goal that he set for his son and, helping his son to reach goals. He's like, but it's more than that. I didn't give him a goal that was hard already. I gave him something that he was already good at, that he can master and strengthen that one thing. It's kind of like what you said, strengthen your strengths and help your deficits. Right.
Yes.
And it's exactly, and he's like, and that's what I do. He's like, I work with these kids that are supposedly behaviorally, emotionally, deficient, if you would, or disabled, whatever. He says, I don't look at it in that way. I look at like, what are their strengths? And that's why they come to this class and I'm able to help them because there's no judgment. And if you could influence someone when you're not judging them, and he gives that to his students. And what he does is he builds off what they're already good at, expression. And it's amazing because it's exactly what we're saying is like, look at what your kids are already good at. And how do you make it a win-win situation for them? So, because here's what discourages kids when they feel like no matter what they do, they're going to fail. Discouraged. They're not going to do it. They're not. You're going to end up fighting the rest of your life with your kids if you're constantly pushing them to do things that they feel that they will not win at. So find the things that, like you're saying, Todd, what are their passions? What are they interested in? What excites them? Figure out how to build that in the repertoire of what you want them to learn.
Yes.
And it'll create magic for them.
It'll create magic and they'll develop the muscle because this is the most important muscle in the body. And if we exercise it with the same level of consistency as we exercise this, amazing things will happen for that child. And that requires a commitment throughout the week. And you can do it in a variety of topics, but the passion area is the playground that they're willing to grow and learn in. And so create those alternative learning techniques in that area. And before you know it, they will rise up in their deficient area and then they'll start to succeed. And this is where the mess and the message come together. Because after a while, when you start to realize you struggled with something and it was messy and then now you've got it and you have it under control, it does become part of the storyline and message that you start sharing with other people because you've been liberated from it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And the other thing for our listeners out there, remember that kids need instant gratification. I mean, we all do. But why we're able to handle it better as adults is because our frontal lobe is fully developed after the age of 25. And so with our kids, that their frontal lobe's not developed, they don't have that understanding of, they're very impulsive because the frontal lobe's not developed yet. And so teaching them, giving them some type of reward and celebration. So one of the things that I do with my families is constantly is setting up celebrations with our kids. When they've done something, celebrate with them, the small things. Train the brain, because when you celebrate, the brain says, oh, I did something good. I like it. It feels good. I want more of that. Because they may be, if it's like what you were saying, like with math, right? Like when you were doing your baseball cards, I'm sure it did not come easy for you to just automatically alphabetize everything. It was probably a struggle, but you had more patience with it because it was in something that you enjoyed doing. So if we, just taking that as an example, if you did that with your kid and they're having struggle with it, but they're still enjoying it, celebrate with them. Take time to praise them and say, gosh, I like what you're doing. Look at the time you're putting into it and look at what you're able to do. We need to take a celebration break and really give them some type of instant satisfaction, gratification, celebration, so they want to stay in it more and longer.
Yes, and encouragement is a secret weapon. And think about the people that have encouraged you in your life and those that discouraged you. So I was a very good athlete, and I had coaches that got me to outperform or to consistently play at a higher level. And those are the ones that encouraged me. And the ones that discouraged me, that were negative talkers, were the ones that I didn't want to perform for.
Yeah.
Or while I was performing, I could only hear their lack of faith in me. So find areas, and I think encouragement is courageous. As an adult, it may feel hard to do, but it is the right path. Find opportunities for encouragement, and you'll be surprised how they respond to it, because even a celebration is encouragement.
Yes.
It's stopping and celebrating the breakthrough and the transformation or the completion. And well, anyway, I just think it's a lost value in our culture, encouragement. And even with adults in the workplace, if I discourage, I get people that underperform. When I encourage people, they're willing to work longer hours. The finished product is going to be better. And they're also going to feel great about the job.
Right. It goes back to one thing that I've learned from my mentor, Tony Robbins. He says that we will do more to stay away from pain than we will to go towards pleasure. And what I have realized as parents, we set our kids up for that. The minute that we're taking things away versus like, you have this, what do you want to do to keep it? Versus you can't have it until you do it. Right. It's that, or that punishment, like you're punished because you did this versus you need not do that because look at the rewards you get from it. And so it's constantly, just reevaluate. That's why it's called redefine. We just got to redefine the way that we parent our kids. And we can't keep doing what was done to us because we're different generations. I was a Gen X kid, definitely different times than I grew up. And, we were a lot more independent back then. And it's just through the generations that we were recycling and we're making kids more independent now because we saw what happened when we were, being there to pick them up and not letting them fall, and they became entitled. And now we're going back to like, no, they need to work for this. They need to know that they have skin in the game. And so with that, it's remembering that their brains are still developing, that we still need to be their frontal lobe to give them the reasoning that they need, but they also need the opportunity from us parents to be open and give them a safe space to talk to us so we can help them through it.
Awesome.
So We have like 1 more minute. So let's, Todd, thank you for being here. If you can leave our listeners with the golden nugget, what would that be?
Well, I think you got a golden opportunity to guide and support young minds so they can go on and do great things. I truly believe it is working within their already desired passion and help them by figuring out where are their deficiencies, create growth games for them, and you will be surprised how quick they start to develop those talents that are then transferable into areas that they're not interested in currently, and they will grow tremendously.
Amazing, Todd. Thank you so much. And please go follow Todd. He is an amazing marketer. If you want to know about how to look good on camera, if you want to know how to take your business to another level, please find Todd. Todd, how could our listeners find you?
Yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere, like on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, but toddhartley.com is my primary location. And I look forward to taking you on a journey of growth and transformation. Veenu, thank you so much for allowing me to join you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Todd, for coming in. And it's our last show of the year. So happy New Year. See you guys in 2024. For joining us on another episode of Redefine Parenting with Veenu Keller. Follow her on Instagram at Veenu Inspires. To learn more about Veenu, as well as download her free ebook now, go to www.veenuinspires.com. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all your news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it.